welcome back to another episode of Deep Quotes. I'm D.
I'm App.
And I'm Pod.
And, you know, D, I know that you like working out. You look like you could lift probably at least 5 kilos at a time. Would you say that's accurate?
Oh, yeah.
Perfect. I'm going to teach you how to program.
Okay.
You think you can handle that?
To a point.
I mean, to be fair, a 10-year-old can. I think we're getting ahead of ourselves. The quote is from Joe Biden. Anybody who can throw coal into a furnace can learn how to program. Oh boy.
I mean, the first kind of counterpoint to that is you can throw coal into a furnace without knowing how to read at all.
That's a great place to start.
you lift thing, throw into fire area.
Mm-hmm.
That's basically what you have.
Or like, say you have nerve damage in your hand and you can't move your fingers individually. If all you need to do is have a shovel and you can grip the shovel with whatever, the 3 fingers that you have to work.
And you don't even need to really be able to see that. You can have very impaired vision to the point where it's just kind of blurry. It's like, look, shovel the black stuff into the yellow stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. That's not too hard for anybody to pick up.
I think we're not being fair here. We're talking about the specifics of the errors in this statement. Anybody who can throw coal into a furnace can learn how to program. I mean, you have to be at least awake. Like I think that the point he's trying to make is that people can be taught anything.
And I agree with that to a point.
Most people can be taught anything, but you have to take into consideration the physical differences of the two things of throwing coal in a furnace is a physical job, programming is a mental job.
They're completely different areas.
Yeah, you have to consider, like, say, like, I know some people that are older and fairly disabled that, like, yeah, they could throw coal into a furnace, probably not all day because, the whole disabled bit, but learning how to program, someone who's 55 years old isn't going to just wake up one day and say, cool, I'm going to learn how to write programming. By the time they learn how to do anything, they're going to be retiring.
And they may not be able to contribute. And even if they do start learning how to code, they may not be able to do it to the same degree as someone else trying to get that position as well.
Yeah, like they would spend 10 years learning how to do something that a recent college grad went 4 years to do and is going to be able to continue improving over the course of the next 40 years.
Right, and I wouldn't necessarily want to stop that 55-year-old person from learning to code.
If they want to.
Absolutely encourage them.
Right.
And give them the resources to be able to do it.
Right, but I think one of the interesting things that Biden's kind of trying to get at a little bit with this is in the jobs front of, okay, we have all these coal miners. We're not using all of this coal anymore. They need to be retrained for some other occupation. Let's put them to work coding.
Mm-hmm.
That doesn't really work in a lot of ways.
Because you've spent your entire life learning how to do something completely differently, and neuroplasticity is something that becomes much less malleable as you age. Children can pick up and learn new things much more quickly than people who are 40 plus.
Mm-hmm.
Along those lines, and I want to pull in a quote from Jordan Peterson here. Quote, "One of the things that has bothered me about the left and the right," and jumping out of the quote, I believe Biden would be considered on the political left in this particular example, and then continues, is the right tends to think, well, if you just got your act together and worked hard, you can make it. And the left tends to think everybody is the same, and if you remove systemic impediments, then everybody could do whatever they needed to do. The left is wrong because there is real diversity of ability, but the right is wrong because there is real diversity of ability.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that this is a perfect example of that, is Biden is basically saying there are no differences between people, and anyone if someone can code and someone can program, that means that everyone can program. Doesn't matter if you're 60 years old and you've been shoveling coal your entire life, you can still learn how to code. And I think that anyone who has tried to teach their grandma how to use a computer or how to use a cell phone knows that that is blatantly false.
Mm-hmm. And like the irony with this quote is that I think this one was making the rounds for a while of like learn to code, and then
And that's a white supremacist thing, and it's racist.
No, like the writers of the articles were like, yeah, just learn to code, you coal miners. And then California changed some of their policies. Writers got lost their jobs, and the internet retorted to the writers, learn to code, and then it was considered white supremacist to say this.
Mm-hmm.
Which is just
and now
interesting and somewhat of a tangent.
Who is on the left, just like California tends to politically be, anybody who can throw coal into a furnace can learn how to program. So he's saying, yeah, you lose your job, learn to code. Now, he's trying to say it in a positive way of, look, everyone is capable of doing things, and you might lose your job, but it's not the end of the world. Change what you're doing, and we believe that you actually can still contribute to society, and you can still hold your own. It's a positive outlook, even if it's moronically false.
But also, like, if you're someone who has for years and years and years been a coal miner, your skill set is useful in other ways other than you just learning how to code.
Absolutely.
Right.
Like, we need people in waste management in large cities. No one wants to do that job, but boy, oh boy, that would use a lot of that same skill set.
Mm-hmm.
Right. That's a big thing, is there's so many other industries that are similar. Yeah, it's not coal, and in fact, they might be safer than working in a coal mine, that we could send these folks off to.
Yeah, well, we need you on the oil rigs. We need you making pipelines. We need you
just working on plumbing.
Working on plumbing would be another thing. Working in a factory, working in transportation.
Basically, skilled labor. That you have been working with your hands all your life, particularly using a lot of heavy equipment. So really any aspect of skilled labor, whether that be construction or troubleshooting. When I bring up plumbing, I mean, like, there's an increasing shortage of plumbers because people who have the skill to go house to house and fix toilets is becoming less and less common because people don't want to do it. And it's viewed, oh, well, why would you do that? You can be a programmer and earn a lot of money. It's like,
you can make six figures being a decent plumber.
So,
like, as long as you have the certifications, which you should probably do anyway if that's the thing you want to do, if you get a decent contract, 6 figures, easy.
Because it's becoming increasingly rare, so you can make more money potentially as a plumber than as a programmer. So Joe saying, oh, you can be a programmer, is trying to say, yeah, you're 60 years old, that's fine. Learn a completely new thing. We believe that you can learn it. You're smart enough to do it. It's very uplifting in that regard. And it means you can just sit back, do something with your brain, and be successful at it. Not everyone can do that. But him saying that, I don't think is meant to be derogatory. It's meant to say, we believe that you are smart enough to do it, or specifically, I believe that you're smart enough to do it, and you don't have to work physically in order to make a lot of money. But it
comes off as out of touch, though, because the person who's been shoveling coal their whole lives, they don't want to think. And I'm not saying that in any kind of derogatory way, but their definition of work up until this point has been physically working. If you say, hey, you have to do a completely different thing in a completely different industry and learn a whole bunch of new skills,
they may not want to do that.
They don't want to do that. They would much rather go shovel poop in a zoo because that's
more what they're used to.
And we're not saying that as this is what these kinds of people want to do. We're not saying it in that regard. It's generally speaking, people who do a particular type of work, when they switch jobs, tend to pick something similar. And there is a very massive jump between shoveling coal and coding. There are ridiculous numbers of differences between those two professions, as opposed to working at a zoo, and maybe not just shoveling poop, but maintaining a zoo. Maybe you have to do some digging or excavation of some sort. So it's
and I mean, like,
and it's not meant to be derogatory either.
I mean, just think of it from the opposite perspective. Say that there was a big programming bubble, and you say anyone who can learn how to program can fix a toilet. It's like, well,
yeah, some of those people can, and some of those people may want to, but not everybody, that's for sure.
Some of them are going to flood your house.
oh, if you're or to pull in another fun example here, it's like, oh well, if you're a senator, obviously you would be able to run a house, and then you have Alexandra Ocasio-Cortez. What is this garbage disposal thing? This is scary. I have.
It makes loud noises.
makes loud-
and
is
I
it
don't
supp-
understand. It's possessed.
Is it supposed to do that? It's like, you think that someone like that could fix their own toilet?
Oh, it's a toilet, not a garbage disposal. She can fix toilets. Probably.
Oh, I see.
Yeah, there's a difference.
But yeah, to back to your point, it's exactly the same thing in reverse. Oh, if you can shovel coal, you can learn to code. Well, if you can learn to code, you can fix a toilet. If you can fix a toilet, you can do anything.
If you can fix a toilet, you can be president of the United States, which, I mean, probably.
Yeah, probably.
Come on, Joe the plumber.
No. Joe the plumber is someone completely different. That was in the Obama era. Another great story. Look up Joe the plumber, and that was fantastic. But I think I'll bring it back again to the quote that I shared from Peterson, is that people actually have diversity of ability. Just because you can do one thing does not mean you can immediately switch over and just simply learn how to do something. And programming is notoriously hard. Like, the whole challenge of computer science is the fact that you have to think very strictly and logically how the computer thinks, and knowing how to troubleshoot that is incredibly notoriously difficult. Which is why programmers have to go to school, generally speaking, for a long period of time. And for the few cases like Bill Gates, it's like, oh, I'll start going to school. Actually, no, I'm good enough at programming on my own. I'm just going to do my own thing, and found my own company. He's in one of those cases where he is better than what the school could provide to him. Most people are not at that point because they are differently able. So going to school is critical in learning how to program. And as we've all seen, or how many of us have seen, trying to teach our grandparents how to use computers and smartphones, picking that up. Even my grandparents, particularly my grandpa, was a mechanical engineer. And he can somewhat use a computer, but I can tell that sometimes when I'm speaking to him, he doesn't understand what I'm trying to say. And that's not to say that he's dumb. He's a really smart person. He knows a lot of things, but he doesn't know about computers. And I think he's at the age where learning those new things is just going to be incredibly difficult. And I think with coal miners, it tends to be an older aspect of the community.
Yes. And something kind of along those lines, it's a little bit different, is when you have those roots in the community, you're not going to want to get up and move. And a lot of those programmer jobs aren't where the coal miners are.
You have to not just learn something new, you have to move to a completely different area of the country and completely change your lifestyle.
Right.
And that might mean leaving an area of the country that your family has lived in for 5 generations. You know everyone in your small town. Hey, you get to go move to a big city where you are now a nobody.
And you have no idea how to function in a big city because you've been living in the country all your life.
And also, like, if your family's been living in the same house for 5 years, you go from having no house payment at all, not being able to sell the house because the area is dying if the coal jobs are dying, to you have to start from scratch. I hope you have savings, which you probably don't have.
Yeah. And so while I said earlier, you know, that this statement could be viewed as positive of you have the capability to do anything you want, it's also just as negative of saying you should forget about your previous life, completely change yourself because you're now irrelevant.
Right. And that's not easy to come to terms with.
Yeah. And like for areas like this where there's, you know, coal mining jobs are going down, like there's definitely a place for industry to move into the area and convert those people over into a different type of work. I don't think programming is the answer.
Generally, it's something similar that is also in a similar location.
Yeah. But like you could move in manufacturing jobs, and I'm certain that would make people fairly happy of like, yeah, I'm out of the coal mines and I'm in manufacturing. But you have to bring the manufacturing to the coal mines. You can't bring the people from the coal mines to the manufacturing.
Or at least while moving people would be logistically simpler, convincing them to move is not very easy at all.
Mm.
Whereas saying, hey, company, there's a bunch of people here that want to work and want a better condition than a coal mine. We can provide that. Here's a factory.
Yeah, put a factory there. People will join. And, like, they all know each other. So you get instant, no one wants to leave, because if I leave, then I'm leaving my friends that I've worked with for 30 years.
And saying, hey, we're bringing in a company. We'll hire you. We'll hire your friends. We want the resources that you can have. We respect you. And we'll give you a better quality of life than your previous job. That's a really easy way of bringing people in.
Mm-hmm. But, like, companies aren't going to want to do that, because that means setting up their factory in the middle of nowhere.
And depending on what you're making, maybe you can actually do that.
Mm-hmm.
So, and the state could encourage that by offering tax breaks to those particular companies to help support the people who are running out of jobs. You want to help reduce dependency on coal, or reduce production of coal without alienating the coal miners? Great. Create tax incentives to bring jobs in that coal miners can do to give them different jobs. Don't be incredibly ignorant and say, oh, well, just completely change your lifestyle, go learn to code. And even if you're saying it in a complimentary way,
it's not going to go over well.
It's ignorant. Yeah. I think we've spent enough time on this one. You guys want to call it?
Yeah, sure.
All right. Well, thanks everyone for listening. We'll see you guys next time.
Hi everyone. Thanks so much for listening to this discussion. Your interest really means a lot to us. If you want to help support this podcast and our goal of sparking discussions and bringing people together, check out how to contribute in the description. Happy deeping!
The content of this podcast does not reflect the views and opinions held by anyone involved. We will frequently be playing the devil's advocate strictly for the purpose of exploration of ideas and not as an endorsement of any subsequent action. We condemn all acts of violence other than those of self-defense against physical harm.